Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with another episode of Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! So today's episode is actually inspired by my own deck building process. I've had a little bit of extra time these days to go and toy with some old archetypes and try to come up with something new. And in working with the artifacts, trap tricks, and some other themes, I ended up finding this mental pattern that I end up following that isn't intentional and often ends up being counterproductive, and it's what I'm going to call the deck doom spiral. I'm going to go and explain that in this video, and then by the end of it, hopefully you guys will be able to realize the concept of the spiral, and if you're following it, maybe ways that you can avoid that so that you can go ahead and build decks as effectively as possible without falling for this trap. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So this all began because I'm about to go back home for winter break, and since a lot of my friends that play Yu-Gi-Oh! Are going back as well, I wanted to come up with something that would be fun to play, but also have a decent chance at winning against Domain Monarchs, Blackwings, Synchros, etc. So quite a diverse field. I think just the dichotomy between tribute summoning constantly with Domain Monarchs and special summoning like crazy with Blackwings and Synchrons just makes it really hard to prepare for with your main deck, because that's two very different strategies. You never want things like Maxi against Monarchs, but then you also got to deal with the crazy special summoning, so like it's a lose-lose situation in many instances. So I wanted to come up with a strategy that could deal with it so that my tech doesn't necessarily fall victim to losing to either of those. And so when I thought about that, I really wanted to look back into artifacts, because whenever I think of these two guys, you know, I can pop Domain before making extra deck plays. I can just stop extra deck summons altogether. This seems like a really good place to start off with. But if I think to the other artifact monsters, as strong as a select few in the engine are, unless you make a dedicated artifact deck, it becomes really difficult to use the other guys to the fullest potential. And the weaknesses of artifacts would of course be relying a lot on your opponent's plays, not really being able to do everything effectively during your turn, because you gotta set them, you gotta let them get killed on your opponent's turn. Even if you twin twister them on your opponent's turn, like, you're still waiting and giving up turns. So I didn't want to play too passively. And so, to solve that, I said I am not going to go and play pure artifacts. That is my number one goal. I'm going to come up with something where I use the strengths of artifacts and leverage it into something more, but I'm not going to just play pure artifacts. And I wanted something proactive like the trap tricks, because, you know, with new cards like Floodgate Trap Hole, Time Space Trap Hole, there are a lot of great ways that we can utilize this. So yes, this is similar to the old hat deck. I still love these. These are probably two of my favorite archetypes, especially for control strategies. And I wanted to bolster that with the Brilliant Fusion engine, which is really cool with both of these, because when you start sending artifacts to the graveyard, you can not only bring them back with Call the Haunted, which synergizes with both of these strategies, but you're able to go and then turn two of your 5s into a Durandal, who just uses your dead Brilliant Fusion as fodder to block one of your opponent's effects. So this was a strategy that I really wanted to look more into. As I fleshed the rest of the deck out, I started to come to a problem. So if we start with Sanctum, that makes sense, because this is an easy 3-of that lets us go and bring out our monsters like the Moral Attack and Scythe, and that helps me accomplish my goal of being able to stop my opponent's plays while putting together some of my own. So it fits exactly in what I wanted to do. Realistically, maybe I wanted a couple scythes along with that Call of the Haunted, and then that'll be a nice little engine that I can abuse without necessarily playing too far into dead drawing artifacts. Well, let's say from here we think, okay, well, once in a while I'm still going to be drawing artifacts, right? So if I want to go and do that, and if I'm considering playing MST to stop pendulums or whatever, maybe I'll consider some artifact ignition. But then again, oh well, ignition makes me set an artifact, so if I'm setting artifacts to the board, I definitely want to be able to trigger big attack and then be able to go and, you know, make big rank 5 plays. So let's play a couple of those. Oh well, while I'm going at it, why not just add the 3rd Scythe, and then I can make sure that I always have an artifact set so that big attack's live. And then, oh, I have so many artifacts, I have to play Twin Twisters now. If you look at all this, what's happened? We started off with Sanctum as our linear, you know, starter. This is just, you play this thing and it gives you a bunch of plays. That's awesome. But then we started going in this chain where we went to Scythe and Moral Attack, and it's like, oh, well, let's play Ignitions because that makes sense. And then when we play Ignitions, we have to play the Big Ol' Attack, and then let's play another Scythe, and then let's play Twin Twisters. But if you look at this, I started here with Sanctum because I wanted to get that easy set one, get some, effect off of there. I never intended to play Twin Twisters and play into all of this engine. So what exactly happened here? Well, this is the thing that I'm terming the deck doom spiral. And it's the idea where you start off with one card and you're playing it with, a few other things that make sense. But because sometimes the names of archetypes are all the same, and sometimes because you're just trying to play something that synergizes with what you already have, you introduce a card that may not be ideal for your overall strategy. And because it creates a weird situation, you start creating this weird linear kind of chain that forces you to go out in a certain direction. If you look at any two of these cards this way, it all makes sense. But if we tie it back, it doesn't make sense anymore. And now we're introducing new problems and solving those new problems with solutions that don't go and address our first initial starting point. This is what I call this terrible deck doom spiral, because you end up with this weird thing where you don't have interconnectivity between everything. You don't have this cohesive strategy where any one card can work with pretty much any other, and you can play any one card if you happen to draw it. If you have this type of situation, yes, it still works. I'm not bashing artifacts, but my original goal was not to dead draw cards like Big Ol' Attack or require having another card like Twin Twisters or Artifact Ignition to enable my plays. I wanted some standalone options, and I wanted to make sure that I could go and just take advantage of a simple engine like Artifact Sanctum. But now you're noticing, if you start introducing new problems and solving those problems instead of sticking with your goal from the beginning, you end up going in this weird direction, and it doesn't matter how many cards you add to fix it. Fixing it with, Twin Twisters at the end isn't necessarily going to solve any of your deck's earlier problems. This, and this are not going to help me fight against Monarchs if they keep summoning their big monsters despite me getting rid of their domain. So how exactly can we get around this? Well, two different directions. First thing is make sure you always keep your goal in mind. If you're trying to use these cards because they give you a certain level of control over your opponent, and you're, trying to utilize them with other cards like the Brilliant Fusion engine and make rank 5s, okay, fine. That works. This is cohesive. But then don't go ahead and try introducing, other cards in this weird chain. Try to keep it with an overall goal. Here, in addition to the trap decks, we're probably going for rank 4s and rank 5s, and we're going to try and make something more cohesive. So something like Star Drawing might actually make a lot more sense in our strategy than something like, going full artifacts. Depends on your metagame. Who knows? Maybe you're playing in an environment where playing more artifacts, Twin Twisters, and other back row removal actually does make more sense. But if I don't want to play into an archetype for whatever reason, then I want to make sure I play cards that actually support my core theme. So keep the goal in. The second thing to consider is always look at your options and think, okay, is this card useful? Does it have high utility overall? If we look at an engine like Artifacts, if I take a single card like Big Ol' Attack and I look at this thing, this is pretty low utility in and of itself. If I were to top deck this with no other cards in my hand, this would be absolute garbage because I can't do anything with it unless I happen to have something else to unleash that power, right? So it's not to say that Big Ol' Attack is a bad card, but in this sense, when I'm trying to play cards that work more independently and supplement each other by going forward, a card like Big Ol' Attack may not be best because it's just not useful as that standalone, and I run the risk now of drawing multiple cards that just don't do all that much. So once in a while, just look at your options and see, okay, can I get something out of this? Sometimes it can't be helped. If you're playing multiple Brilliant Fusion, you're probably going to have to consider running maybe 2 Garnets, just because many people will agree that if you play 1, there's a very good chance you'll end up with a dead 4-card engine. Whereas if you play the 2 Garnets, you can deal with the inevitability of drawing Garnets out if you end up playing some other rank 4 enablers. So In essence, you can deal with some problems that must happen. But if you don't need to create a problem in the first place, try to avoid that. Think of some other cards that you can make. Don't just put a band-aid on a temporary problem. See if you can, look at things globally, look at your deck, and make choices that actually fit with the core strategy, and then you won't have to worry so much about fixing minor issues along the way. If you do happen to have a big issue like this that you can't get around, well, fine, you could deal with that, either adding cards or just accepting the fact that once in a while you will draw that Garnet. So, have you had any of these similar experiences where you started off with a card, made a choice, and then that snowballed into a bunch of weird, unrelated choices? Let me know your experiences down in the comment section below. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, as it really does help me get this content out to as many people who might find it useful as possible. And if you like more of this series, you can either click the link in the description box below or the playlist that you see on the bottom right. You can also click the one that you see on the left to take yourself to my most recent video besides this one, in case you want to check out anything else on the channel. And of course, if you really like this and would like to stick around, then I encourage you guys to subscribe for more weekly videos. So thanks guys, this is JDGaming. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.